Anna walked out the door that night dressed in a bold red dress she hadn't touched in years, saying it was just a friend's party. When she came back, it was as if I was staring at a stranger, a woman I thought I knew, yet who had been hiding something all along. What happened that night? Who was she when she was with him? The cracks in our marriage turned into an earthquake that shattered everything I believed in. She wrote in her journal, letting me know this isn't just a story about betrayal, it's a story about finding yourself in the rubble. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. And if you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss what's next. I used to think our marriage was my final destination, a solid, unshakable foundation we built together. But something shifted, and it wasn't in me. It was in her. Anna and I were married for 6 years, together for 10. Ours was a relationship with its fair share of ups and downs, but I always believed we were happy, or at least content. We weren't perfect, but who is? We had plans, a house we were still paying off, conversations about children we wanted someday, and those dream vacations we never quite got around to taking. They were enough for me, enough to keep moving forward, or so I thought. In the beginning, Anna was my best friend, my partner in every sense. She was vibrant, witty, and ambitious, everything I admired in a person. I trusted her completely, maybe too much. As the years passed, our life settled into a comfortable rhythm: work, bills, dinners, and late-night TV marathons. I thought that's what marriage was supposed to be, a mix of stability and occasional chaos. But looking back, maybe I got too comfortable. Melissa, Anna's old college friend, had always been in and out of our lives, a name mentioned in passing or an occasional visitor at our home. They had drifted apart over the years, but when Melissa invited Anna to her birthday party, I didn't think much of it. I was even happy for her to reconnect. She'd seemed a little distant lately, distracted, but I didn't realize was that Melissa's party would introduce someone who would tear our marriage apart. Long after I'd forgotten her, I had the same feelings of discomfort as I did when Melissa invited Anna to her birthday party. His name was Ryan. A stranger at the time, just another guest at Melissa's gathering, but he became more than that. More than I could have anticipated. Using a sensitive matrix rendering of the wait list, Melissa gave him 10 and asked for their phone records. I replay those early signs now, over and over in my mind. Her distance, the way she'd started scrolling through her phone more often, pulling away when I reached for her. At the time, they felt like fleeting moments, the kind of thing every couple experiences. I told myself it was nothing, that it would pass. Hermits. But it didn't. There was a growing gap between us, and I didn't know how to bridge it. Now, sitting here in the aftermath of everything, I wonder if I was blind or if I simply refused to see. What could I have done differently? I ask myself. Though deep down, I know the truth. It wasn't just about me. Anna made her choice, and that choice shattered everything we built. The first real sign was the red dress. It had been buried in the back of her closet for years, a relic of another time. I remember when she bought it, how her face lit up as she modeled it in front of me, spinning just to hear the fabric swish. She had worn it only a handful of times, special occasions mostly, and then tucked it away. It wasn't a dress for errands or casual gatherings. It was bold, striking, and unapologetic. So when I walked into the bedroom and saw her zipping it up in front of the mirror, I paused. She had been getting ready for hours. Hair curled to perfection, makeup meticulously applied, lipstick in a shade of red that demanded attention. "Wow," I said, leaning against the doorframe. "You're really going all out, huh?" I leaned in closer. She glanced at me through the mirror, her expression unreadable. "It's been a while since I've gone out," she replied, smoothing the fabric over her hips. "I just want to feel good tonight." There was something in her tone, an edge, a distance, but I brushed it off. Why wouldn't she want to feel good? She had been quieter lately, more withdrawn. If this party with Melissa could lift her spirits, who was I to question it? But even as she kissed me on the cheek and walked out the door, I couldn't shake the unease settling in my chest. It wasn't just the dress or the makeup. It was the way she'd avoided my eyes, the way her smile felt hollow. I told myself I was overthinking it, that I was just being insecure. But deep down, something had shifted, and I could feel it. It didn't happen all at once. The distance between us grew slowly, like a crack in glass that spiderwebs under pressure. She became distracted, her attention often elsewhere. We would sit together on the couch, a movie playing on the screen, but instead of laughing at the jokes or leaning into me like she used to, she'd scroll through her phone, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the screen. When I asked her what was so interesting, she'd mumble, "Nothing," and flip the phone face down. That was new. Anna had never been secretive about her phone before. We knew each other's passwords, borrowed each other's devices without a second thought. But now, her phone was always locked, always close by. She started leaving the room to take calls, her voice low and clipped. If I asked about it, she'd roll her eyes and say, "Melissa and I are just catching up. Is that a crime?" It wasn't just the phone. It was everything. The way she pulled away when I tried to hold her at night, claiming she was tired. The way her laughter felt forced. Her conversations with me stilted and brief. Even her scent seemed different, like she had switched perfumes without telling me, trading something familiar for something sharp and unfamiliar. The worst part was how normal she acted when she wanted to. Some days, she'd smile like nothing had changed, kiss me goodbye before work, or curl up next to me on the couch like she always had. But those moments only made the gaps more glaring. It felt like I was holding onto the shell of someone I loved, while the person inside was slipping further away. The first undeniable sign came the night she didn't come home until 4 a.m. I was already in bed when I heard the front door creak open. Groggy, I got up and found her sitting on the edge of the couch, still in that red dress, her makeup smudged, her hair disheveled. She smelled of alcohol and something else. Something musky, foreign. "Hey," I said softly, trying not to sound accusatory. "You okay?" She didn't look at me. "I'm fine," she mumbled, her voice flat. "I just need to sleep." And with that, she got up and disappeared into the bedroom. The next morning, I asked her how the party was. She shrugged, gave me a vague answer about how it was fun but exhausting, and quickly changed the subject. But her demeanor had shifted. She seemed jittery, almost defensive. When I pressed, she snapped, "Why are you making such a big deal about this?" Her words stung, but I let it go. I didn't want to fight. I told myself I was overthinking things, imagining problems where there weren't any. But the doubt lingered, growing louder with every late night, every evasive answer, every glance at her phone. Looking back now, I can see how blind I was, how much I wanted to believe in us. But the cracks were already there, and no matter how tightly I tried to hold on, something precious was slipping away. The moment came on an ordinary evening, one of those nights when Anna's phone was never out of reach. She had been in the shower for about 10 minutes when the screen buzzed. I wasn't trying to pry. I was sitting on the bed, scrolling absent-mindedly through my own emails. But the message preview caught my eye. A name I didn't recognize. Ryan. And the words, "I can't stop thinking about last night. When can I see you again?" For a second, I thought I must have read it wrong. My eyes scanned the words over and over, hoping they would rearrange themselves into something innocent, something I could dismiss. They didn't. My chest tightened, my stomach churned, and a strange ringing filled my ears. I froze, my fingers hovering just above the screen. It was as though my entire body had forgotten how to move, how to think. The familiar room around me seemed foreign, its once comforting silence now suffocating. The water in the shower was still running. She would be out soon. The thought jolted me into action. My heart pounded as I carefully placed the phone back on the nightstand, exactly where it had been. My hands were trembling, but I forced myself to sit back down. to look normal, like I hadn't just stumbled across a message that would upend my entire world. The minutes that followed were a blur. I heard the water shut off, the sound of the shower curtain sliding, and then her footsteps padding across the bathroom floor. When Anna emerged, wrapped in a towel, she gave me a casual smile. It was the kind of smile that used to make me feel warm inside, but now it felt hollow. Fake. I couldn't meet her eyes. "Hey, can you grab me my lotion?" she asked, her voice as natural as ever. I said I'd grab your lotion off camera. I didn't say I was here. I got up without a word, retrieved the bottle from the cabinet, and handed it to her. My hand brushed hers, and for a moment, I wondered if she could feel how tense I was. If she did, she didn't say anything. She turned back toward the mirror, humming softly as she rubbed the lotion into her skin. It was an ordinary scene, the kind that had played out 100 times before, but now it felt surreal. I left the room, retreating to the living room where I sat in the dark. My thoughts raced, colliding and spiraling until they formed an unbearable knot in my chest. Who was Ryan? What had happened last night? My mind filled with images I didn't want to see, scenarios I couldn't control. I wanted answers, but the weight of the message left me paralyzed. How could I confront her without proof? And even if I had proof, what would I say? For the next few days, I watched her carefully, trying to piece together the fragments of truth hidden in her behavior. Every time she smiled at me, I wondered if it was genuine. Every time she picked up her phone, my chest tightened. She laughed a little too easily at texts I couldn't see, and seemed lighter in ways that felt deeply wrong. One night, while Anna was asleep, I made a decision I never thought I'd make. My hands shook as I picked up her phone from the nightstand and unlocked it. The passcode hadn't changed. It was still her birthday. The familiarity of it stung, as if some part of her wanted me to find out. What I saw confirmed my worst fears. The messages between Anna and Ryan stretched back months. They weren't just flirty exchanges or inside jokes. They were explicit, intimate, filled with confessions of stolen nights and hidden feelings. She had told him things she'd never said to me, how alive he made her feel, how our marriage had become comfortable but uninspiring. There were photos too, moments captured just for him. My heart felt like it was being crushed under the weight of it all. I couldn't read anymore. I placed the phone back where I found it and locked myself in the bathroom. Sitting on the edge of the tub, I stared at the tiles, trying to process the betrayal. Every moment we'd shared, every promise we'd made, now felt like a lie. I wanted to scream, to cry, but all I could do was sit there, numb and broken. The following morning, I couldn't look at her. I left the house early, using work as an excuse to escape. At my desk, I stared blankly at my computer screen, replaying the messages in my mind. The words, the pictures, the lies. They consumed me. I questioned everything. Had I missed the signs? Was I too blind? Too trusting? Or had she simply decided I wasn't enough? By the time I returned home that evening, I had made up my mind. I couldn't stay silent anymore. When Anna walked through the door, I was sitting at the kitchen table with her phone in front of me. She froze, her face pale. "What's this about?" she asked, her voice a fragile attempt at innocence. "You know what this is about," I replied, sliding the phone across the table. "I read the messages, Anna. I know." For a moment, the room was silent, heavy with the weight of what couldn't be unsaid. And then everything began to unravel. It was late. The kind of late where the house seemed unnaturally quiet, every creak of the floorboards amplified in the stillness. I sat at the kitchen table, Anna's phone lying in front of me, its dark screen reflecting my tense face. My chest felt hollow, yet heavy, like a weight pressing against my ribs, making it hard to breathe. I had spent hours going over the messages, each one cutting deeper than the last, and now I waited. The front door opened softly and her footsteps echoed in the hallway. She stopped when she saw me, her smile faltering. "What are you doing up?" she asked, her voice cautious. "I figured you out," I said. I lowered myself into the chair and heard the front door slowly open behind me. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I gestured to the chair across from me. "Sit down." She hesitated, her eyes flickering to the phone on the table. Something in her face shifted. Fear, maybe? Or guilt? She took a slow step forward, pulling out the chair and lowering herself into it. "What's going on?" she asked, her tone attempting nonchalance but cracking under the tension. I slid the phone across the table toward her. "I read the messages, Anna." "I know." The color drained from her face, and for a moment, she just stared at the device as though it might burst into flames. Her hands trembled as she reached for it, but then pulled back, letting it sit untouched. "I didn't mean for you to find out like this," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I called to her name, but was utterly silent. "That's what you're worried about?" I snapped, my voice sharper than I intended. "That I found out, not the fact that you've been lying to me, to us, for months?" She flinched at my words, her hands curling into fists in her lap. "It's not that simple," she said, her tone defensive now. Don't," I interrupted, my voice cold and steady. "Don't tell me it's not that simple. You made a choice, Anna. Over and over again, you chose him." She blinked rapidly, tears welling in her eyes, but I felt no sympathy. Not now. Not after everything I had read. "I didn't plan for this to happen," she began, her voice cracking. "At first, it was just texts. It felt harmless. Like nothing." "Nothing?" I echoed, incredulous. "You call months of lies, secret meetings, and sleeping with him nothing?" Her tears spilled over, but she didn't look away. "I was unhappy," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I felt invisible, like we were just going through the motions. Like you didn't see me anymore." Her words hit me like a slap, but I didn't let it show. "And you thought the solution was to destroy everything we built?" My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. "You didn't talk to me. You didn't give us a chance to fix it. You just turned to him." "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she pleaded. "I swear I didn't." "Stop," I said firmly, holding up a hand. "Stop making excuses. You didn't just trip and fall into his arms, Anna. You made a choice." She buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking as she sobbed. The sound might have broken me once, but now it only fueled my anger. "Do you even realize what you've done?" I continued, my voice trembling with emotion. "You didn't just betray me, you betrayed us. Every promise, every memory, every moment. We're not just broken, Anna. You shattered us." Her hands fell away from her face, and she looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "I know I hurt you, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life. I never wanted to hurt you." "But you did," I said, my tone flat. "And now, I don't know how to come back from this." The silence that followed was deafening. She sat there, her tears falling freely, while I stared at the table, my mind racing. Part of me wanted to scream, to throw something, to make her feel even a fraction of the pain she had inflicted on me. But I couldn't. I wouldn't. I was too exhausted to keep holding on to the anger that burned inside me. Finally, I stood up, pushing my chair back with a screech. "You should go," I said, my voice low but firm. Her head snapped up. "What?" "I can't do this right now," I said, avoiding her eyes. "I need space to think." "Fine," she started, her voice desperate. "Please, Anna," I interrupted, my voice breaking slightly. "Just go." She stared at me for a moment, her expression a mix of disbelief and devastation, before nodding slowly. Without another word, she stood, grabbed her coat, and walked toward the door. The sound of it closing behind her echoed in the empty house, leaving me alone with the suffocating weight of what had just happened. I sank back into the chair, my head in my hands. The anger was still there, but now it was joined by something heavier. Grief. Grief for the life we had, the future we'd planned, the love I thought was unbreakable. I had always imagined us growing old together, laughing about our younger selves and the challenges we'd overcome. But now, All I could see were the shattered pieces of a life that no longer felt like mine. In that moment, I realized the truth. No matter how much I loved her, no matter how much I wanted to believe we could fix this, something had changed. Something I couldn't ignore. Something that couldn't be undone. And for the first time, I wondered if this was the end. Anna sat on the couch across from me, her posture hunched and fragile. Her hands clutched at tissue, twisting it nervously as she tried to form her next sentence. "I know I hurt you," she began, her voice trembling. "And I'll regret it for the rest of my life. I want to make this right." I leaned back in the chair, exhausted. "How do you make something like this right, Anna? You didn't just hurt me. You destroyed everything we had." Tears streamed down her face, but I was too numb to feel anything. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes," she pleaded. "Counseling, therapy, anything. Please, don't let this be the end." I wanted to believe her. For a brief, painful moment, I imagined us sitting in a therapist's office, finding a way to piece everything back together. But then I remembered the messages, the lies, the meetings, the way she laughed with him about things I didn't know, and my chest tightened. "I don't think I can do that," I said finally, my voice hollow. "I don't know if I can ever trust you again." She let out a shaky breath. "We don't have to decide everything now," she said, her words desperate. "Just give us a chance, please." I looked away, focusing on the faint pattern of the rug beneath my feet. "I need space," I said quietly. "I can't think clearly with you here." Her face crumpled, but she nodded. "If that's what you need, I'll go," she said softly. "But this doesn't have to mean it's over." I didn't respond. She stood, walking slowly toward the bedroom to pack a bag. The sound of her zipping up her suitcase felt like a final nail in the coffin. When she left the house that night, the door clicked shut behind her, leaving an emptiness that was almost unbearable. The silence in the house was suffocating. Days passed, each one stretching into the next with an aching slowness. I tried to distract myself, work, chores, even mindless TV, but her absence was everywhere. Her favorite mug sat untouched in the kitchen cabinet. The faint scent of her perfume still lingered in the bedroom. Every reminder of her felt like a fresh wound. The doubt crept in, slowly at first, then all at once. Was I making the right decision? Could we really fix this if I just tried harder? But then I thought about Ryan, about the secrets she had shared with him, and the pain resurfaced. One evening, I found myself staring at my phone, her messages to Ryan replaying in my mind. A name kept surfacing, Melissa. She had been there from the beginning, the party, the connection. She must have known something. I didn't want to make the call, but I needed answers. When Melissa picked up, her voice was hesitant. "Hey, it's me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course," she replied, though there was a pause before her words, as if she already knew where this was going. "Did Anna meet Ryan at your party?" I asked bluntly. The silence on the other end was deafening. Finally, Melissa sighed. "Yeah," she admitted, her voice cautious. "They met that night. I saw them talking, but I didn't think it would go anywhere." "Did you know?" I pressed. "Did you know they've been seeing each other for months?" "No," Melissa said quickly. "I swear I didn't know. If I had, I would have said something. I never wanted to be part of this." Her words felt genuine, but they did little to ease the betrayal. "You should have stopped it," I said, my voice colder than I intended. "You saw it happen, and you did nothing." "I didn't know," she repeated, her voice breaking slightly. "I thought it was harmless. I'm sorry." I hung up the phone, the weight of her words settling over me. It wasn't just Anna who had betrayed me. It felt like the whole world had conspired to keep me in the dark. The isolation was unbearable, the betrayal cutting deeper than I thought possible. That night, I sat alone in the living room, the quiet of the house pressing down on me. Anna's absence no longer felt temporary. It felt permanent, like a wound that would never fully heal. Every shared moment, every promise we made to each other felt tainted. The call with Melissa confirmed what I already knew. This wasn't just a mistake. It was a choice, deliberate and calculated, that spanned months of deception. And no matter how much Anna cried, no matter how much she begged for reconciliation, I couldn't ignore the simple truth. She had broken something that could never be repaired. In the stillness of that evening, I made a decision. This wasn't something I could forgive, and it wasn't something I could forget. The life we had was over, and no amount of counseling or apologies would change that. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing. It wouldn't include Anna. We stayed on course for the day, having the weekend in mind. Anna included 2 days off during her yoga instructor training. I sat at the edge of the bed, staring at my phone. The contact list blurred for a moment as I scrolled, my thumb hovering over the name of the divorce lawyer a friend had quietly recommended. Days of silence and reflection had led me here, but the decision still felt like a physical weight pressing down on my chest. I had replayed every moment of our relationship in my mind. The laughter, the shared dreams, the promises whispered in the dark. I thought about the early days when everything felt effortless, when we couldn't imagine a future without each other. But no matter how many good memories I clung to, they were all overshadowed by the betrayal, by the months of lies that had unraveled the life we'd built. I realized that no amount of love could undo what she had done. With a deep breath, I tapped the number and hit call. The line rang twice before a calm, professional voice answered. "This is Jennifer. How can I help you?" "I need to file for divorce," I said, my voice steady but cold. The words tasted bitter in my mouth, but they also brought a strange sense of relief. This was the first real step toward taking my life back. When I told Anna we needed to talk, she came over that evening, hope etched into every line of her face. She must have thought I had reconsidered, that the space we had taken was enough to change my mind. I hated that I was about to shatter that hope, but I couldn't give her something I didn't have. Trust, forgiveness, a future together. We sat at the same kitchen table where I had confronted her weeks ago. She folded her hands in front of her, her eyes searching mine. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she started. "I know I hurt you, and I'll never stop regretting that. But we've been through so much together. Please, let's try to fix this." Her words were careful, rehearsed, but her voice cracked with raw desperation. I could see the tears welling in her eyes, her body leaning forward as if she could will me to agree. "I can't," I said, my tone firm yet quiet. "You betrayed everything we built, Anna. I've thought about this every day, every night. I can't come back from this." Tears spilled down her cheeks and she reached for my hand. I pulled back. "Please," she begged, her voice trembling. "We can go to counseling. We can rebuild. I love you." I shook my head. "Love isn't enough, Anna. You didn't just betray me. You betrayed us. Every promise, every memory we shared. You made a choice, and now I'm making mine." Her sobs filled the room, but I didn't waver. I felt hollow, numb, but there was a clarity in my decision that hadn't been there before. I wasn't angry anymore. Just done. She left that night, her suitcase in hand, her tears unchecked. The sound of the door closing behind her echoed like the final note in a song I never wanted to hear. I sat at the table long after she was gone, staring at nothing, feeling both the unbearable weight of the moment and a strange, fragile sense of peace. The divorce papers arrived a week later. Signing them felt like the end of a chapter, one I never imagined I'd have to close. 6 years of marriage, 10 years together, reduced to a few sheets of paper. As I signed my name, a tear fell onto the page. I wiped it away quickly, forcing myself to stay composed. This wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was the one I was left with. And now, for better or worse, I could finally begin to move forward. On the second trip home, I was glad I could start cashing in. The house felt too big after Anna left. Every room echoed with memories I couldn't escape. Her laughter in the kitchen, the faint hum of her singing while she folded laundry, even the way she used to curl up on the couch with a book. Now, all of it was gone, replaced by a suffocating quiet that clung to me like a second skin. For the first few days, I moved through the motions of life like a ghost. I went to work, came home, and sat in the same spot on the couch, staring at a blank television screen. The emptiness was unbearable, but I didn't know how to fill it. One night, I forced myself to take a walk. The air was cool and crisp, carrying the faint smell of leaves and earth. I walked aimlessly through my neighborhood, letting the rhythm of my footsteps ground me. It wasn't much, but it was a start. That walk turned into a nightly ritual, and soon after, I started going to the gym. At first, it was just something to do, an excuse to leave the house, but eventually, I began to feel a shift. The physical effort helped quiet my mind, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of control over my life. Cooking came next. I hadn't realized how much of our meals had been Anna's domain until she was gone. I started small, simple recipes that didn't feel overwhelming. There was something meditative about chopping vegetables, stirring sauces, and watching as raw ingredients transformed into something warm and nourishing. It reminded me that I could still create something good, even from the mess I felt trapped in. One of my friends noticed the changes and suggested I join a local hiking group. At first, I hesitated. The idea of meeting new people felt exhausting, and I wasn't sure I wanted to explain why I was there. But something about it called to me. Maybe the promise of fresh air, or maybe the chance to step out of my head for a while. The first hike was awkward. I stuck to the back of the group, keeping to myself. But as the trail wound its way through towering trees and the sun broke through the canopy, I felt a strange sense of peace. Nature didn't care about my pain. It just existed, steady and unchanging. That's where I met Lauren. She was part of the group, though not overly chatty. We ended up walking side by side for a stretch of the trail, and she offered me an easy, genuine smile. "First time with the group?" she asked. "Yeah," I replied, my voice a little hesitant. "Just trying something new." She nodded. "It's a good way to clear your head. Beats sitting at home, right?" There was no pity in her tone, just understanding. It felt safe, unforced, and for the first time in a while, I found myself relaxing. Over the next few hikes, Lauren and I began talking more. She wasn't like Anna. She was down to earth with a quick wit and a laugh that felt unguarded. She didn't press for details about my past, but when I shared small pieces, she listened without judgment. One day, after a long hike, we stopped for coffee with a few other members of the group. Lauren and I ended up lingering long after the others left, trading stories about everything from work to childhood embarrassments. She mentioned a messy breakup she'd been through, and I saw a flicker of something familiar in her eyes, a pain she had carried and learned to live with. "I get it," she said quietly, after I mentioned the divorce. "It's hard to trust again, after something like that." Her honesty disarmed me. "I don't know if I can," I admitted. "You don't have to figure it out all at once," she said. "Sometimes just taking the next step is enough." Lauren and I didn't rush into anything. It started with texts about upcoming hikes, then coffee after, and eventually small gestures that spoke louder than words. A shared smile, a thoughtful question, a moment of quiet companionship. She didn't try to fix me, and I didn't try to fill a void with her. Instead, we met each other where we were, two people carrying scars, but still willing to try. As the weeks turned into months, I began to feel something I hadn't felt in a long time: hope. The house, once suffocating, started to feel like my own. I painted the walls, rearranged the furniture, and even got rid of the throw blanket Anna used to love. Each change felt like a step toward reclaiming my life. Lauren became a steady presence in that journey, not a savior, but a reminder that life could be good again. We were still figuring things out, but for the first time I wasn't afraid of what came next. Healing wasn't a straight path, but it was mine, and I was learning to walk it one step at a time. The first time I stepped into a therapist's office, I wasn't sure what to expect. I didn't want to talk about Anna or Ryan or the messages that haunted me late at night. But I did want to understand why I felt like I was still carrying the weight of her betrayal, why every decision felt like I was second-guessing my own worth. "What do you want to get out of this?" the therapist asked, her voice calm and even. I hesitated, then replied, "I just want to feel like myself again." That was the beginning. Over the weeks that followed, we unpacked the anger, the guilt, and the doubts I had buried under layers of hurt. She didn't let me shy away from the hard truths. Anna's choices weren't my fault, and her betrayal wasn't a reflection of my worth. Slowly, I began to see the cracks in my self-admission for what they were. Wounds that could heal with time and effort. The house, once a prison of memories, became a canvas for change. I repainted the living room a deep, earthy green, replacing the pale gray walls Anna had chosen. I rearranged the furniture, bought new sheets, and hung up a photo from a solo trip I had taken through the mountains. Each small change felt like reclaiming a part of myself, a declaration that this space was mine now. Not a monument to a failed marriage, but a home that reflected who I was becoming. I rediscovered the hobbies I had let slip away over the years: cooking, hiking, even sketching. The things that had once brought me joy began to feel natural again. I started spending Saturday mornings in the kitchen, experimenting with new recipes while music played softly in the background. In those moments, I felt a quiet sense of accomplishment, a reminder that I was capable of creating something good on my own. Reflecting on everything, I realized the pain wasn't entirely gone. It probably never would be. But it no longer controlled me. It had become a part of my story, a lesson etched into my soul. Betrayal had taught me about boundaries, self-worth, and the kind of trust that can't be given lightly. But it also revealed an inner strength I didn't know I had, the resilience to rebuild, to forgive myself for what wasn't mine to carry, and to hope for a better future. As I sat on the porch one evening, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I allowed myself a small, hopeful smile. The scars were there, but they were just that, scars. Marks of healing, proof that I had survived. And for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to trust again. Maybe not fully, not yet, but I knew that someday I could. And that was enough. Healing isn't a straight line. It's messy, unpredictable, and often feels like taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back. There were days I felt strong, like I could conquer anything. And then there were nights when the memories crept back in, whispering doubts and regrets. But I've learned that healing isn't about erasing the pain. It's about learning to live with it, to let it shape you without defining you. For anyone who has felt the sting of betrayal, let me tell you this: you are more resilient than you realize. It may not feel like it in the moment. The weight of heartbreak can be suffocating, and the path forward may seem impossible. But step by step, day by day, you begin to rebuild, not the life you had, but a new one, forged by your own strength and choices. I won't lie and say it's easy. It's not. You'll question yourself, replay moments, and wonder if things could have been different. But eventually, you'll stop living in the shadow of what if and start embracing what now. You'll find pieces of yourself you thought were lost, and you'll create new ones to fill the gaps. Life after betrayal isn't the end. It's a beginning. It's a chance to rediscover who you are and what you deserve. For me, it's meant learning to trust again, not just others, but myself. It's meant finding hope in small moments and believing that love, in its truest form, is still out there. If you're in the midst of your own storm, know this: the clouds will clear, the pain will lessen, and when it does, you'll find that the future isn't something to fear. It's something to embrace.